Welcome to Footy Kickin Good. I'm Jamie Moraes, back on the couch again this week with my usuals, Michael Flynn, Mikhail Quinless. Boys, you excited? It's midway seasons, the bye rounds. How are you guys feeling with the bye rounds? I mean, is it a bit lackluster for you guys as I feel about them?
Well, it's been a while since we've been back as well.
Yeah.
So
it's we just got finished watching the most boring game of the season. Padge has been chewing our ear off all year about how teams have been scoring. The last couple of weeks, I think last week the high score was like 81 or 84 or something. So we just witnessed a game where they kicked about 40, 50 points each.
Yeah, look, you're not going to rub the smile off my face because the Hawks did get up somehow. I have no idea how, whether we deserved it or not, but I don't know if Adelaide deserved it last week against Brisbane.
Yeah, swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad we got it. We're staying within the pack, I guess. But boys, doing something different. You know, we're at that mid-season mark, and I thought it'd be nice to go do some mid-season report cards, I guess, on every team. So I've given everybody their teams, and we're kind of going to go through it all through alphabetical order. So we'll start with Adelaide, end with West Coast, and starting with Adelaide, we got Mikhail Quinless.
all right, so Adelaide, I've got obviously doing all right. They're very good, heavily scoring against teams as well, especially teams they should be beating up against. But then and the teams that they have lost to, they've lost to the Suns by a point, Cats by 19, Freo by 18, and they just lost to your mob by 3 points or whatever it was. So they haven't been doing, obviously too bad. They haven't been like knocking the door down as well. But they did beat Brisbane last week as well, which was real kind of like game they needed to make a statement as well, like really like beating a big time team. So the mark I gave them, if I get it back up, was a B+.
B+, I think that's about fair.
I think it could almost be an A.
Almost an A.
Yeah.
I feel like that Brisbane win is actually really big for their side because they haven't got that big scalp in recent years.
I just think it's like, if we're going, expectation versus what they've actually accomplished this season, they look like they're going to be a top 8 side, and under Matthew Nicks they've never been a top 8 side, and I don't think they've made the finals since they lost in the grand final. So all things look to be heading in the right direction. B+ to A, I think, is pretty fair.
Yeah, no. All right, I got the next one off the cab, but it is the Brisbane Lions. All right, so obviously we just mentioned they lost the Crows last week. They've drawn with North as well this year. Mm-hmm. I feel like their form has come across as a bit inconsistent.
Yeah.
But they've also had these incredible comeback wins, and you saw it with Adelaide where they could almost come back and snatch that game. Where it's like, no matter how far you put them down, they're always in the game, which is like making them probably still showing how dangerous they are in the competition. Like, you can't really count them out. I honestly believe this is a side that is maybe in second gear still. I don't feel like they've, fully hit their strides. The beautiful thing is that I think they're one of the few sides that could, and they showed it last year, that can win it outside the 8, and they can probably still do it again.
Outside the 4.
Outside the 4, sorry.
Yeah.
But look, I think they're a very good premiership chance. They're sitting second on the ladder, obviously.
By the way, I think teams like Brisbane, Geelong, Giants, I think a lot of it is like bank enough wins to qualify, but we know they've got extra gears.
Yeah.
And Brisbane are probably the side that epitomises that more than anyone.
Yeah.
Last year they were an average side during the home and away. They started really badly, and then they just they hit form in the final series. So I wouldn't be too worried about some of their down performances.
Yeah, well, I think the crazy thing with them is that even though they're showing signs of inconsistency, they're still sitting second on the ladder.
Yeah.
They're doing enough. That's all they have to do right now.
And top 2, you'd almost think it'd be pretty hard for them not to make another grand final.
Yeah.
So on that basis, I've given them an A-.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, fair?
I think so. They're second, so they can't be too harsh.
Yeah, I don't think you could be anything less than an A if you're sitting second. Yeah. Moving on to Carlton. Flinny, you've got that mob?
Look, I take no pleasure in whacking Carlton. You know this. Look, they were expected to be one of the contenders this year.
Yeah.
I think most people, they made the finals last year, but I think most people thought they'd be around the mark this year. They've only really had one decent performance for the year. They beat Geelong, and I think that's really their only decent scalp for the year. if you look at all their other performances, their finals hopes are still alive because they're playing West Coast and North in the next couple of weeks for the second time this season.
Put that in there.
I had to put that in there. I've got them as a D+.
D+.
I think that they're not going well at all.
Yep.
And they're barely hanging on. But I still think they're 5 and 7. So it's possible to make finals and turn it around. But
you've got to be pretty much perfect from now on.
Yeah.
To play finals.
Do you think they're going to play finals? Just no chance.
No. Even against, last week they played Essendon, and Essendon have got a ridiculously long injury list, and they still struggled to get over the line there. So
yeah, no, fair enough. I think that's a fair assessment of Carlton. Look, I had them to miss finals at the start of the year. That was my controversial call, and it's looking on the money. But you never know. If, some teams turned it around last year. We saw after the midway point of the season. So they're one that's got a great draw to kind of help them possibly achieve that. Moving on, Mick, you've got Flinny's mob, the Pies. What have you got? Because Flynn's been waiting for this. He's
I'm ready.
A big.
He's watching closely at what the grading's going to be on this one.
So with Collingwood, they've pretty much been close to perfect. I think besides that round 1 loss to Giants, which was aberration. Other than that, they've just been pretty much like I said, close to perfect. They could have beaten Geelong. It was after the siren. Cripps missed that shot at goal, and then they haven't lost it anymore.
No.
Yeah, so I've given them an A+. You can't be doing much wrong. Sitting a game and a bit on top of the ladder.
You've made Flinny very happy over there.
They're now in the position they'll be able to rest players. So I can't see them falling out of the top 2 to be fair for us.
Do you have any worry being Collingwood supporter? Do you think that there's, injuries that could bob up? Do you think you have the depth? Do you think you've hit your strides a little bit like Sydney last year?
I just want to point out the fact that Jamie questioned our depth before the start of the season. And our depth players are absolutely on fire.
Yeah, they are.
In Ned Long especially.
Your boy.
My man. But look, things can always take a turn. Carlton were about 40 points up against GWS in a game last year when they were flying, and from that moment onwards to now, everything's gone badly for them. So, I'm actually more confident this year than I was in 23.
Wow!
Yeah. I think things are looking. I still think we've got another gear, considering Nick Dacos and Houston and some of our superstars are not really at their best yet. So I think there's still room for improvement.
And a quick one for you, because everybody kind of thinks the Pies are going to make the grand final, and that's the team you got to beat this year.
Yeah.
Who do you least want to play in the grand final? Of all the contenders.
The contenders?
Yeah.
Honestly, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
I would say Geelong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I reckon that's a very good possibility of the grand final, to be honest. Yeah.
I just think that similarly to us, Geelong are a side that they don't really have to win all the key metrics. They don't have to win the clearances and contest the ball and all that. It's they're just so efficient when they have the ball that you give them chances and they'll take them. So they're a bit of a kryptonite for us, Geelong.
Yeah. I reckon if Brisbane still had Danaher, I'd put Brisbane in there. Yeah. I still think Brisbane are an awesome team, but Geelong have, Jeremy Cameron.
The Cameron factor is huge.
Loves playing against Collingwood as well.
And Dangerfield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they did beat them early in the year, so...
No, definitely. All right, moving on. I've got Essendon. I've got some... I've had some choice feelings about Essendon over the last couple of years. Look, the first I'll say is that I didn't think they were going to be a great side this year. Yeah. I kind of had a peg for bottom 4.
Yeah.
And I kind of still think that they're capable of it, especially with the injury toll that they've kind of copped this year. But look, they've won, I think, almost all their 50-50 games this year.
Yeah.
On top of that, I think outside of their loss to Carlton, they've beaten every team that was below the 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think they've only lost top 8 sides, which is pretty high praise.
And they've blooded a lot of young players.
And that's my next point. They've blooded a lot of young players. Which I think they neglected last year completely, which I hated about them, and I probably criticised them the most.
Do you think that last year they were trying to compete, and this year they're trying to rebuild?
it's tough to say. I feel like Brad Scott is one of those coaches that always wants to compete, whereas I feel like sometimes you got to take that step back, and I feel like even if they do it now in the second half,
I think as well, given that they extended Brad Scott, I think that was basically permission for him to take a step back with the team and try and, blood some youth into the side.
They probably know they're not going to be competing now this year anyways. There's no point, trying to push for that so high. Just might as well play the kids.
As Jamie said, you got to look like a top 4 side to make the 8.
Yeah.
And that's where I look at teams like Carlton and Essendon that are outside of it and thinking they're not going to. The form's just not there. Whereas teams like Bulldogs that have been sitting around the edges a little bit, GWS, they've shown form to be like a legitimate top 4 side.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, playing the youngsters, I think they're all going to be better players next year because of that. They've obviously had I don't know if you call it luck, having extra mid-season picks because of long-term injuries, but they also get to try their hand at another 4 players, 2 of which are debuting this week. And for that reason, I've actually given them a B+.
I think that's too high.
Too high?
Yeah.
I think their list and what they're doing is going to set them up really well for the next years to come.
You're the people that you're friends with that support Essendon just fell off their
The thing is, I reckon the only way they you probably give them the B+ is players like Caddy's really stepped up as well.
But here's the thing, I'm comparing Essendon to Essendon. I'm not comparing them to another side, so it's not like A- for Brisbane is the same as it's like they're close to Brisbane or anything like that.
I think for more of a B.
I thought pretty close,
or maybe a C+.
No, because I also think what's really important is keeping your supporters happy, and I think the supporters are happy with the effort, what they're seeing, and they're really happy seeing the young guys come.
That's through. Because I've got obviously a heap of family that go for Essendon, and all they've been texting is they're just happy, especially with that Carlton game. Yeah, they're just happy with the effort they've shown. Even against Brisbane, they're happy with the effort they've shown. So I think right now, like you said, they're just happy with consistent good football as well. Yeah, and the fact that they're so young with their current playing list, at least that's playing on the ground. I feel that puts them in good stead, and they haven't lost looked bad or looked off or looked below expectation at all. They looked above, if anything. So I stick by my B+. Okay. Moving on, I think we've got Freo next, and that's you, Flinny.
Now this was a really hard one for me. I think Mick said earlier, if we'd been doing this a month ago, I think my grading would have been a lot lower. I had Freo winning the flag going into the season. I was the only one in the world that did. But most people saw their trajectory as top 4 this year. They've actually won their last 3, so I think they've against good sides, and they play North this week. So I think right now they're sitting 9th, 7-5. It's a tough one. I think they're doing reasonably okay. I've got them as a B for the season. I reckon a month ago I would have had them as a C. But yeah, I think that they're in a position now to really challenge for finals. I don't think they're going to get top 4. But I think if they were to finish 5th or 6th, that would be a pretty decent result. Take a little bit of pressure out of the club.
Do you think they're a lock for finals?
Not a lock, no.
Not a lock?
There's 2. I think there's probably 9 really good sides this year, and one's going to miss out. So,
what about you, Mick? Do you think they're playing finals this year?
If they could, Flynn said, they've won games away against good teams, at Gold Coast and GWS. You wouldn't really expect them to win. These are 2 games you probably wouldn't even give them points for. So they've banked points there, and they've got games at home that they should be winning as well. They've got North this week. So
out of these teams, I think let's exclude Collingwood, Brisbane, Adelaide, Geelong. I think they've made it.
Yeah.
But out of Hawthorn, Gold Coast, Bulldogs, Giants, and Freo, one has to miss. Yeah. And because Essendon are actually 10th behind Freo somehow. But it's sort of there's a big gap between the top 9 and the next 9.
Yeah, I agree.
And right now with all those teams, probably Fremantle are coming in with the best form as well.
Yeah. I think Gold Coast are the ones that if they go on a run of losses, the wheels could fall off very quickly.
100%.
Yeah, I agree. Geelong Cats, Mickey, that's you.
Geelong. I've got Geelong, always Geelong, just consistent just playing good football. They'll lose their odd game like they did against St Kilda. They've been Collingwood, so they've shown they could play good teams as well. So not much more with Geelong. Consistently good. I've given them a B+.
All right. I might maybe would have leaned an A, to be honest with you, especially with Bailey Smith in that side, just looking in Brownlow form as well. I just think, it's like you said, it's hard to criticise them. They're just good every year. And they seem to now, their list looks like it's even younger than it has been in previous years, and they're still performing to a really high level.
Yeah. Yeah, Geelong, obviously, we spoke about them with Brisbane before. They've just got gears to them. Yeah,
they're unbelievable and possibly going to be facing your mob in the grand final if if things don't go your way, Flinny. All right, I've got the Gold Coast Suns. All right, look, I didn't think the Gold Coast Suns were going to make the finals at the start of the year. Did you? I don't think both of you boys.
No, none of us did.
None of us did.
Yeah.
They've surprised us. They've actually stepped up that gear. All their stars are kind of firing. They look like a completely different team.
Winning away.
Yeah, winning away as well.
Their home form has been really good. Especially those games in Darwin where they were just elite. And
you take into consideration they missed out that opening round, so they're one game behind, and they're sitting fifth at the moment.
Yeah, so they're technically probably in the top four still.
Yeah, exactly. They got Essendon twice, so that could potentially be 2 wins for them. Look, their draw's not that hard as well, so this is the year for them. Really, it'd be pretty shocking for them to have the wheels fall off for them. It is possible though.
They lost to Richmond as well.
Yeah. Sydney lost to Richmond and made a grand final last year. So, but look, I've got big question marks, and I think you just alluded to it. Whether they can, that's second half of the season, whether they might fall off, whether they start losing games, losing on the road.
Do you think that even some of the contract talks could possibly hurt them, like Matt Rowell banking? Because I don't know what the word is. I feel like the vibe around Rowell has drastically changed recently, where people are like, "Nah, it feels like he's going."
Yeah,
and I thought he was a lock to stay.
Nah, right now they're talking about Collingwood, Geelong, these teams really going hard for him.
Well, he's the real big main free agent that's kind of out there.
Yeah,
I guess.
He's not a free agent though.
Not a free agent, but there's been no positive talks. No one said anything positive about him having any kind of discussions with Gold Coast in terms of wanting to re-sign or starting contract negotiations. There's also rumours, I think Cal Toomey's come out and said that Collingwood believe they've landed a big fish, not knowing who that big fish is.
I think as well, Rowell went to high school with the Dacos boys and Dan Houston, so there's a bit of a connection there. So,
So another one Collingwood might be stealing over there. But I've given the Gold Coast a B. Think that's fair?
I think they're higher than a B.
Yeah.
The fact they're that far in the ladder.
From where they've come from, I think they'd be wrapped with where they are right now.
Yeah, look, honestly, talking through it out, I feel like I've got them a bit low, so I might give them
4. They're going strong.
8 and 4, and they should have they should have been beating Fremantle and Richmond.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to change. I'm going to go A-.
Okay.
Yeah. A- for the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
Moving on, GWS, that's you, Flinny.
So this is kind of the inverse of Freo, my last one. So the start of the year... So first of all, every media pundit in Australia had them winning the flag going into this season. And Jamie and I were sort of like, really? And then they came out and absolutely obliterated Collingwood. And we're like, okay, I understand the hype. But then they've sort of flirted with their form a little bit. So... They lost at home to Port last week, which is a really bad loss considering the form that Port's been in. Yep. I still think they can turn it around. They're sitting 7 and 6, so I think they're in the 8 right now, probably 8th. I've got them as a B-.
Okay.
So I think most of us expected them to be genuine top 4. They're just off that at the moment. And they've got a couple of injuries. Their form's not great, but I think they can bring it back.
I think that's fair. I feel like, I thought at one stage I said that it's locked, and I still think that's possible with GWS in there and Freo outside. But if one team is going to miss, I feel like it's them. And I think early season when they did, obliterate the Pies, we talked a lot about their depth, and I feel like their depth hasn't held up. And
it's been challenged.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm curious. It's not a lot of high draft picks, a lot of fringe players that they've kind of put time into. And you're not seeing any kind of potential A-graders there. So I'm wondering if that might be their Achilles heel.
And Finn Callahan looked like he was going to be like a Brownlow medalist this year and then went down injured.
Even Hogan, I don't know, I haven't watched much of him. He's kind of slowed down as well.
Yeah. Started off like a house on fire.
And Toby Green gives us glimpses, but it's similar to last year. He's just not the player he was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mickey, over to you and my mob, the Hawks. You better have something glowing to say, yeah? Or you won't be back.
I was about to give them a big F, but they won today. So with Hawthorn, they started on fire, like they continued their form from last year. So they won the first, 3 or 4 games, whatever it was. And then they had the bye, and then they lost to Port Adelaide, and then they lost to the Cats.
Yeah.
And then they had some 2 easy kills. They beat the Eagles and then the Tigers. And then they've lost... They lost to Brisbane and Collingwood. They were absolutely smashed, especially in the media. Like weren't tackling and all that kind of stuff that they were showing last year. So I reckon they've had I wouldn't say a bad season, or that I've given them. If I get back to it, a C+.
A C+.
I'll give them a C+. I just think last year, like, they reached a really high level, and I think a lot of the players haven't reached that level as well. So I reckon there's still a whole bloody half a year to turn them around.
I would have had them as a C+ after the Pies game, but I reckon what we saw against the Bulldogs has where they brought just a better level of intensity and pressure.
Yeah,
I think that showed that like they're capable. I guess, especially beating them at Marvel. A team that's really been having a good year.
Look, I'll say this to defend my Hawks.
Yeah.
All right. Probably the only anomaly would be that Port Adelaide game that we lost.
Yeah.
That was pretty bad. I know they kind of shocked us a bit, but we've lost. The only other teams we've lost to are Collingwood, Geelong, Brisbane, Gold Coast up in Darwin, which is is probably as good as any test. And they're all potential top 4 sides.
Yeah, but then again, you can look at it in a way and be like, these are all teams like
they should be competing
against, and you've lost against all of them.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say is Hawthorn were beating those sides last year. Like you smashed Collingwood last year, and this year you got smashed. So it's I see where Mick's coming from. I agree with you. I don't think they're firing like they were last year. Obviously, Sicily was out of form and then injured and whatever.
No, I think Hawthorn, they came from like nowhere last year, and they just got into this run, like just no one could touch them. I think now, like, not teams have worked them out, but like they've got a kind of like a game style to stop them now.
Yeah. Well, I think they're definitely on par with their form from last year. I just think they haven't shown that they can be a top 4 side, which they couldn't last year as well. So I feel like that's in that bracket, but second half is hopefully going to be a lot better. Will Day potentially coming back in August. Sicily hopefully returning to form. Mitch Lewis potentially coming back. Culture Deer, we haven't seen the best of this year as well.
That's true.
So there's a lot of positives still to come back for the Hawks. So hopefully, for my boys,
right now, you guys just got to bank these wins, just stay in there, and then, like I said, come finals.
I think we'll beat all the teams we're supposed to beat for the rest of the year. Yeah, put it that way.
And I think Ginnivan's turned the corner the last month as well.
Yeah,
things are back on track.
It's a very even effort among the Hawks boys, which is really nice to see. All right, I've got the Melbourne Demons next. Now, I don't know how many people... I don't know how you boys felt specifically about Melbourne, but I felt there were at least a few pundits that thought that they would be back in playing finals. I thought they would be around the mark.
I think I had them from around 6th, maybe.
Yeah.
No, I had them being really low.
Really low. So it probably differs a little bit.
Yeah.
Their start of the season was horrendous, to be honest. As bad as you could probably ask for, especially, with Oliver and Petrarca all having proper pre-seasons and all that kind of stuff. But look, they turned it around, starting to click. Cossie Pickett, big signing. What do you boys think about that? Is it a good deal? Is it a bad deal?
Well, it's always good to keep a player like that, but like it comes... Like,
they paid overs, but I mean...
Sometimes you have to.
Sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, do you think part of it was like, we're going to go after Luke Jackson and we're taking Cozzy off the table? Like similar to sort of like Hawks with last year, how they traded their pick. It's like, well, now we don't have it anymore. It's like it's similar to that. Like it's like, we still want Jackson, but you can't have what you wanted.
I mean, there's no guarantee with Jackson either.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a real tough one for me to kind of grade. But I will say they've got some positives in the fact that Lindsay and Langford look like, 200 game players. Putting games into them is going to be really great for them, I think.
Some of their, I guess, like lesser names have had pretty good seasons.
Yeah.
Kate Chandler's having a really underrated year. So he's one of them. Judd McVie looks like he's going to be a future captain potentially. So there's things to be excited about at Melbourne.
For me, I think it was really crucial for them to be playing finals this year with the whole looming Petrarca and Oliver situation where, last season they were both trying to get out. I don't think it'll be any different this season, and I feel like their form is probably going to be the big contributor to that. So I don't think it's going to be a great rest of the year for Melbourne, I guess, as well.
What did you think of the Stephen May, Max Gawn thing?
Oh, I reckon that kind of stuff, like, you like to see it as, not like as a fan.
It shows they care.
It shows they really do want to win and stuff, but that stuff, especially probably to one of your best players in your team, and obviously the captain. He's
not just the best player in the team; he's their greatest player ever.
He's
in the conversation.
You do that behind closed doors as well, and like you said, like Gord's been like the mouthpiece for Melbourne for like so long with like the whole Petrarca stuff, Oliver stuff, Cozzy Pickett stuff, and like. You have Stephen May coming in and cracking at him because he's like made a mistake.
The thing is, May is a hothead and he's never been able to control that. And he's what is he, 30s now?
Yeah.
I just think that it was really poor because it's a skill error.
Yeah.
Why does he need to be told off for that? It's like
some would say skill error, some would say that maybe
wrong decision, but 30 seconds to go, he's just trying to get the ball through the middle. Yeah. I get it. He of all people doesn't need Stephen May telling him not to do that.
Yeah, no, 100% agree.
Yeah.
And it's a big contrast. You look at the best team in the comp at the moment, the Pies. What happened when Jack Chris missed that goal after the side? All the boys got around him. Look, that's the kind of culture you want to build.
By the way, you can always tell when a team's united and when they're not.
Yeah.
Melbourne do not look like a team that's united.
Yeah.
This whole year, the last few years, they've really looked a little bit just, you can tell there's a few players that don't get on.
Yeah.
And it was shown.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we ended on this note because I kind of felt harsh. I felt harsh about my grading.
Yeah.
But now I feel a little bit more vindicated. I get my D+.
Well, I think higher.
I think they're in all sorts of trouble.
I still think that...
I don't think their list is where it's at. I don't think their forward line... I think Jefferson and Van Rooyen are failed experiments, really.
Look, looking at the ladder...
Where are they?
So they're 13th. That's basically where I thought they would finish. So I think they're probably more of like a C.
I thought they'd be fighting for finals, to be honest with you.
Mm.
And they look far from it. Culture looks off. Max Gawn is just carrying this side for too long. I don't think Petrarca and Oliver are going to want two bars to stay, really.
Mm.
And I think they're in trouble, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could be in real trouble. Especially if these two guys leave, they could be in real big trouble.
All right, moving on. North Melbourne, Flinny, that's you.
North Melbourne. Look, not having a great year again. So they're 3 wins, 8 losses and a draw. They've only beaten 17th, 18th and 13th. 13th was Melbourne. That's been their best performance for the year. They really were lucky to get over the line against Richmond and West Coast, who I think most people thought North should be a level above based off how hard they've hit the draft compared to those two teams. They were probably tipped by a lot of people as an improver going into this season. I knew a lot of North fans that were like, if we can win 8 games or whatever it was going into this year. They traded away their future first round pick. So I think, and they loaded up on free agents. So I think that tells us that they thought they were going to be reasonably good this year. I've given them an F. I think that this is a really, really bad season for them. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, here's the thing. Do you think they're a better side than they were last year?
No.
Really?
Nah.
Because they had, I think it was 3 wins last year, and they've already got 3 to
Actually, no, I take that back.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think they're a better side, but how much better? Marginal. Like, they've been really, like all right, put it to the perspective, from the perspective of a Collingwood supporter. I watched them get 50 points up against us last year, and then I watched us steamroll them with basically a VFL side a couple of weeks ago. I think that Sheasel was a much better player a year ago. Wardlaw, okay. You know, like the youngsters, McKercher was great last year, starting to hit some form start to the season. Larky's having a terrible season.
Yep.
I just think that it's been a real disaster, especially when you consider the fact that, as it stands, they're going to hand away like a pick 3 to Richmond for Whitlock, who's played 1 game.
Yeah.
And it was a pick in the late 20s.
Yeah, no, I can see you justify that.
Yeah.
I probably would have put them around the D's, to be honest with you. I don't think they're an F, but you definitely make good points, and there's probably potentially a couple of North Melbourne fans that might agree with you. We'll move over to Port Adelaide, and that's you, Mickey.
Port Adelaide. Kenny's last year, and I reckon they I don't know why they gave him that extra year. I think they probably thought, let's go 1 more year trying to get to this grand final, try to get him to a grand final, which was obviously failed dramatically. So but
the thing that doesn't make sense about that is, if he made the grand final, wouldn't they be like, let's keep him?
But it's kind of like the Malthouse thing.
Malthouse Buckley.
It's like a fool's errand. It's like, you keep him and he does badly, and everyone's like, why did you do that?
Yeah.
You keep him and he does well, and everyone's like, why are we getting rid of him?
Yeah.
It really doesn't make any sense.
So I looked at Port Adelaide. So the only game they really won, they beat Richmond, they beat Hawthorn, which was a good win, and they beat Sydney, and then they've beaten North. And then the rest of the games, obviously, when they've lost terribly. So
they
lost
beat GWS as well.
Last week. So they've lost by 91 points, 90 points, and 76 points. So when they do lose, they are like non-competitive, and they're absolutely getting belted off the park. So I have given them a D.
D? Yeah, that's probably fair. I'm a little bit optimistic that they could have a really good second half of the season. But what they've shown is definitely below par, especially from last year. They were top 4 last year.
I honestly think that they could be an F.
Yeah.
Purely because they were in a prelim last year, and they're currently in the bottom 4.
Yeah.
Like, that is as dramatic a fall off as you would want to have. And they have a relatively young list, so it's a pretty bad fall off.
Yeah.
I would say.
No, completely.
And if they lose,
they also these are the teams that have worse percentages than them: North, Richmond, West Coast.
That's it.
Yeah, yeah. So they've gotten absolutely
when they lose badly.
Yeah. And percentages seems to be everything this year, especially when it comes to positioning in the top 8. Look, I've got the Richmond Tigers. Am I right in saying we all thought they were going to win the Wooden Spoon?
I had them not winning a game.
You had them not winning a game.
They're an A+ on my rating.
But look, they've won 3 games so far this year. I've got down here, some thought they wouldn't win a game. That's you, Flinny.
Yeah.
Look, games into young guys as well.
Yeah.
You know, I think they've gotten almost all their draftees this year. Games almost. Look good. Lawler looks like he'll be an absolute gem.
They've picked bloody well.
Yeah.
You look at some of the players they've picked. I think Luke Trainer's going to be a 250 gamer.
Yeah.
He looks like a jet.
Yeah. And you look at like what North did last year where they brought in these experienced talent. They've already got it. They're already like that year ahead of what.
But the
North
other thing is,
make up.
it's different to bring in experience rather than actually having it.
Yeah.
And these guys are not like misfits from other clubs. They're premiership champions at Richmond.
Yeah.
And like, we said it during the season that like a lot of their experience is in the back half. And so that's why I think they're a bit more competitive than West Coast and North have been in their like rebuild years. Especially when Bolter plays as well. They just look like really settled in the back line.
Yeah.
Forward line's obviously the big issue. Midfield's got a lot of depth. You know, Taranto, Hopper, Prestia, these guys. But when Lynch doesn't play, there's not much there. But yeah, I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I think obviously they had a really close game against the Giants. I think the last few weeks have kind of shown that these young guys, the toll of the season's kind of getting to them.
Yeah.
And their output seems to be dropping now, and I feel like there's also going to be a tougher stretch coming up. So for that reason, I've kind of given them a C+.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think it serves them. I also still think they're a very good chance for the wooden spoon.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that was expected.
Yeah.
But still Richmond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still think we're too far. West Coast are too far behind.
Yeah.
No, I know, Jamie, you're big on this. The fact that they drafted a mixture of key position players as well as midfielders.
Yeah.
I think that getting games into Jonty Fall and they've only played a couple of games, so I don't remember Thomas Sims.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big bonus, but I just think that the pick one, Sam Lawler, can he play?
Yeah. Look, like I said, a lot of key position players. They're going to take a little bit longer to develop as well. So, look, but credit to them, they're doing everything right, and I think the fans are pretty happy. And again, I think that's a really good indicator of the club.
Question for you: if you were Tasmania, would you rather Harley Reid or Sam Lawler?
Sam Lawler.
I think I actually think that Reid has more scope. People
say that, but I've seen him maybe do that in 4 or 5 games, and I reckon most of them were last year.
Yeah.
It's Reid.
Yeah.
I just think it's harsh on Reid. I don't agree with it. I think in a better team, he'll be such a better player.
I think once he's fit as well, but Lawler to me is a better mark, and he's more like... He seems like more of a Toby Green to me, like just clever, uses his body, whatever. Reid has things that no one else has.
Yeah.
That he could really elevate him to that danger field.
I agree. Flynn, you got the Saints.
St Kilda. Now look, they're another side that I thought would be bottom 4 going. I think I had them 3rd last going to the season. I think I had North above them, so I wasn't very positive with them, and we knew that Max King was going to miss a lot of the year. They've had a couple of other injuries. They've actually put together some really decent performances. Mick mentioned before that they knocked off Geelong. They beat Port over there, which, that's a big result for them. They've also mixed in some absolute shocking performances against the Western Bulldogs. That's the one that sticks out. And they lost. Losing to West Coast in Perth's just unforgivable. But similarly to Essendon, I think they've blooded a lot of really good young players.
Yeah.
I like the look of Garcia. There's, off the top of my head, you probably can think of a bit more.
Yeah, for me, I feel like they're still relying too much on their older heads, like
Wilkie.
Yeah, even
Steele.
but I mean they're good players and they're good contributors. But when I look at someone like Zach Jones in the side, I'm like, why?
Why is
you know what I mean? You got all these young kids that could easily be playing and getting experience, and he's not even playing that great.
To be honest, obviously Wanganeen Miller is an absolute star.
Yeah.
And Jack Sinclair's a gun. Like they've got the knock on St Kilda for a long time is they didn't have an A grader. I think they've probably got 2 now.
Yeah.
So
who's that tall Indigenous player in the forward line? He looks like a real player.
Yeah.
So I've got them as a C.
C.
So I think that's fair.
Yeah. I probably agree with you there.
Yeah.
Heading back over to Mick, you've got the Sydney Swans.
Sydney. So I've got them. I can't tell what else they were. So they've had a real Sydney-like year so far. So obviously they started the year so poorly with the injuries in the preseason to was it McDonald who was injured? Oh no, he's a
Goulden.
Who that's a massive loss for them, and then Papley injured as well. So that's 2 big outs as well, and then
McDonald has been injured by the way.
Yeah. When they have lost, which was they got absolutely pumped by Adelaide, and then they even lost poorly against Melbourne. You don't see that from a Sydney team. They always show fight, they'll tackle and all that kind of stuff, and you haven't really seen that from them this year. And then the teams they have beat, they've beaten Richmond, Carlton, North, and Giants, who haven't Giants all right this year. So the teams they haven't been anywhere near the top as well. So I've given them a D+ from Premiership to.
I think that might be overs.
Yeah.
I still think Sydney, they're a team with players coming back that could push for finals.
I reckon they're a team. Obviously, they lost the grand final by a decent margin, and that normally means you're going to have a pretty much of a shocker next year.
Pretty much,
we thought it might be the difference because Dean Cox coming in and all that kind of stuff. Look, they're a team that can always bounce back pretty quick when they're rarely on the bottom for very long.
Well, last year they were minor premiers with 17 wins.
Yeah.
They've had 5 this year.
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very bad fall off.
I think your grading's pretty spot on. If not, it could probably be a little bit lower.
I think D+ doesn't sit right with me. D, just a D.
Because I think they've had a better... I think, actually, no, they haven't... I don't know, Port Adelaide. I gave Port Adelaide a D.
But
And they've got smashed as well.
But Sydney are falling from a greater height than Port are. Port were never really in the hunt last year. Sydney were the premiers. People were comparing Sydney during the season last year to... Was it the Brisbane Lions from the early 2000s?
Okay.
Remember they were doing comparisons with the midfield and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
And that's backfired massively.
Nah, that's huge. I still think they can bounce back next year. I think this year is probably going to be a bit of a
And
write-off.
keeping Warner, it's massive for them as well. So
could be a big play for him.
we'll get him for free.
All right, I've got your mob, Mickey, the West Coast Eagles, and I'm glad you had the Hawks.
No,
that's all I'll say. I'm glad you got the Hawks.
Well, that's to say, I gave your mum an A, so...
So the Eagles are currently in last place. I want to say they bought in Baker and Graham last year, and they basically sacrificed their draft capital to do so. They won 4 games last year. And what are they on this year, Mickey?
1.
1 win?
Oh, I didn't realise that was like a question. Ask him again.
Mickey, how many wins have West Coast got for the year?
It's I was being nice to you.
I gave my team an A+, but I don't care.
Look, for the majority of the year so far, I feel like they've honestly looked like a VFL side. I feel like they haven't looked AFL quality.
You're an idiot, you reckon?
But I will say the last few weeks, I've seen McQualter's game plan.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing, the players buy into it. I'm seeing improvements. I think that they can, scrounge another win or two, possibly avoid the wooden spoon, because I think Richmond's percentage is going to cop a bit of a beating when it comes to versing, I think, Geelong twice in the second half of the season.
I think because North Melbourne had that draw, it'll be hard to pass them as well.
Yeah.
But I think we do have Richmond at Perth as well.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's the only other team I think we could win.
Jamie, let's be honest. They were shit last year, and they're worse this year.
They are. They've definitely gone backwards for a side that knows they need to rebuild. So that's the real kicker there. And for that reason, the Eagles get an F.
In absolute...
I gave North an F. They have to be an F.
They have to be an F. I'm sorry.
No, mate. Alright, you go and then I'll go.
Alright.
Don't.
What can you say?
We don't.
I think we've been competitive in more games than we were last year.
No, so last year you went through a patch where you beat the D's on your home deck. You beat Fremantle. You smashed them. You haven't even looked anything like that this year. No, Harley Reid was like unbackable for the Rising Star. He's barely got out of first gear this year.
Yeah, well, wait until next year. No, I reckon, like you said, we, in my opinion, we have been more competitive. We stuck with. I know you said we beat Melbourne last year, but we stuck with them for 3 quarters. We could have beaten Essendon at Perth. We could have beaten the team we could be beating is Richmond. We could have beaten them. Could have beaten North last week.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda. For me.
And
how many points do you get for could have beaten teams?
Should be getting at least 2.
All right, finish us off here, Flynn. We'll finish off the West Coast chat. Finish us off.
Mick still wants to go.
The Western Bulldogs.
I've changed my thing from Hawthorn to D.
Look, I'm a big rat for the doggies. All right, Going into the season, I didn't have them in the finals calculations. I thought this would be a down year for them. They obviously crashed out of the finals last year against Hawthorn. Went into the season with no Bonds, no Treloar, no Jones, no Jamari Ugle-Hagan. They also lost Sam Darcy for half the season, half the games this year. Cody Waitman's injured. And they're still in a position to make the top 4 potentially. I think they've done a great job in banking wins with waiting for troops to come back. I think that barring a couple of games this year, I think they've looked really good across the board. Should have beaten Collingwood without Bontempelli and Trelaw. Should have beaten Brisbane. So I'm a big rap for them. I'm going to give them an A for this year.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
And look, Darcy looks like he could be an absolute superstar. He could probably win games off his own boot.
And look, re-signing Bevo just shows that like they're very confident.
You reckon they jumped the gun?
Yeah. But honestly, I know me and Jamie have an opinion of like signing coaches and taking the pressure off them can hurt teams, but I think Bulldogs, just with the talent that they have, Matthew Kennedy looks like he's become a completely different player. Ed Richards has gone up to becoming potentially even an A grader this season.
Yeah,
I'm a big rat for the Doggies.
Yep, no, can't agree more. I'm a big fan of what the Doggies are doing. I'm hoping Sam Darcy becomes the next player to kick 100 goals because I think he's the only player I've seen since Buddy capable of doing it. And it's going to be a big watch. I think Bulldogs fans are going to have a lot of fun just going to the footy just to see what Sam Darcy does. So I think,
and they've got another Darcy coming in 2 years.
I mean, it's a scary prospect.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. So before we jump into our closing segment, I'm going to introduce a new guest to the show. I want to introduce the incredible Luke Casamento.
I'll tell you what's crazy. Luke's been sitting in the cuck chair the whole time. He's just sitting there watching. You're so unnerving.
Now,
I was trying not to make too much noise and, not...
Eye contact.
Yeah.
Now, Luke...
Sorry.
Wait, firstly, do you think it's a bit harsh, the F that Eagles got?
Look.
Let me start by saying that Luke's maybe not the biggest AFL expert, I guess there is, which is maybe why he sat over.
He knows nothing.
On the side.
He knows nothing.
But that brings us to our next segment.
Do you have a graphic for the segment to come up?
I don't. Look, if I had time, I would have sorted out a graphic, but maybe next time, because I'm sure this is going to be a hit and Luke's going to come on again. But we're going to pit Luke against Flynn today.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a guess this player game between you two. And it's going to be AFL versus NBA edition. So, Luke, you're going to guess AFL players. Flynn, you're going to guess NBA players. And we're going to see who's going to get the most right.
It's possible that I know less about NBA than he does about Flynn. So this should be interesting.
All right, so there's 7 players. Bear with the technology here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, can I say I'm not a part of this?
Now, Mickey, you're not.
You can go get us drinks.
Mickey, you're not a part of this, but I'll give you a guess after Flynn if he can't get the NBA player. Now you have to have an attempt at the name.
Okay.
All right, you have to have an attempt at the name. Now the way I've organised
this could be offensive.
The way I've organised this, I'm hoping it's going to be. It starts easy and then gets harder.
Okay.
And there's a couple of legends in there, so it's kind of like see if you can figure them out. All right. I think Luke, you're going to be kicking it off.
I can't wait for this.
This could be interesting.
This could be interesting with the tech.
Luke, who is this player?
This is Max Gorn.
Yeah.
Oh, you would hope he knows that, being a Melbourne Demon supporter.
It's actually Maximilian.
This is the guy you want closing out the game for you.
Luke didn't watch the game on the weekend.
No, I watched the game, unfortunately. To be honest, it was a great game.
I'm technically a D's fan.
Yeah.
Okay,
don't you see the D scarf?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that.
Right, Flynn, you got the first one.
All right, Flynn, your turn. All right, can you guess this NBA player?
LeBron James.
LeBron James. Well, boys,
that's a bad beard on you, man.
You are both 1-1, so well done. You got through the easy stage.
Yes.
Now we move on to round 2. Luke, your player.
Gary Ablett Jr.
Oh, he got the junior in there as well.
Yeah.
All right, Flinny.
Can you give us a fact about Gary?
He's got no hair. Good teeth.
All right, Flinny, your player's up next.
What's his dad's name?
Flinny, come on. This is, by the way, can I just say this is Luke's favourite player of all time.
This is
Second favourite player of all time.
Allen Iverson.
Oh! Did you actually know that?
Apparently, he went bankrupt at the end of his career. There's
Hey.
a fact for
Oh,
you.
there you go.
He did.
There you go.
did.
And correction, Luke's favourite player is actually Ben Simmons.
Yeah, correct.
So he loves his Sixers, so Sixers great Ben Simmons.
Come on, challenge me, Jamie.
All right, round 3. Luke, you're up first.
Shit. Chris Judd.
Oh, he gets it.
Can you put him with the Eagles stuff instead?
Nah, he looks better in navy blue, I reckon.
Anyway.
You give him all the easy ones.
All right, Flinny, you gotta get this one.
Yeah.
Come on, Flinny, he's an absolute legend.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Magic Johnson.
Magic Johnson.
Shit.
Jesus, 3-3.
Yeah.
Boys are doing great. It's only gonna get harder from here.
Hey, it's been very easy so far.
All right. Keep talking. Round 4. Luke, who is this beautiful man?
Now I'm in trouble. I don't know.
Can we give him a hint?
No. I want to hear him have a stab at the name.
This is Nick Dacos.
Luke, if I could give you half a point, I would.
This is his brother,
What's his brother's name?
Ben Dacos.
This is Josh Dacos for the Collingwood Magpies.
Oh, yeah, Josh.
Josh. You were close though. You were close. Let's see if Flinny can get the next one.
Jesus.
That's SGA.
Yes, it is SGA. Flinny.
Full names.
Oh,
full names.
all right, full names.
mate. With correct pronunciation.
Shannon. No, Shy Gilbert Arenas.
No way. In no way does he get a point.
Do you want to reveal it to him?
What's his name?
Gilgis Alexander.
Oh,
All
I'll
right.
take half a point there.
No,
Fair
we're stuck.
share.
We're stuck on 3-3.
How did you get that?
I know, because they're in the playoffs. Like,
Yeah,
by the way,
it's not in the playoffs.
I didn't do any homework, but he's the MVP, right?
Yeah, he's the MVP.
Yeah. I think I should be able to get that.
No.
I think you should know the MVP's name.
All right, round 5. Luke, who is this player?
Oh no. Now I'm really in trouble.
Considering Josh Dacos was a stumbling point.
It's all downhill from here, isn't it? This is Tony Golbert.
Do you want to tell him who it is, Mick?
Cody.
What's his first name?
Tom.
Oh, he's got it. He's got it.
TDK.
So you
TDK.
were nearly there.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Tony DeConing.
All right, Flinny, your shot next.
Oh, Jesus.
Rudy Gobert.
Oh, he knew it. That's a great pick.
He's
up there,
been
Flynn.
studying.
I think he's been studying.
But how am I meant to study his photos?
All right, Flynn. This may be a lead that's not going to be able to be reached by
no,
Luke.
it's
Where are we at?
Because it gets harder. We're round 6, so you guys have 2 more each.
Oh, jeez.
All right. How you do that?
Luke. Come on, Luke.
Careful with the name.
Nah, I'll give him a clue.
Has he got 2 of the same name? All right. No, but there's a couple, isn't there?
I think there's only one. Yeah, there's only one that has the same first name, the same
Has
last
he got a brother that's in the NBA or a cousin or...
of him?
Yeah.
Not that I know of.
Steph Curry.
No. Jeez, what is it? Is it a bowl? Or...
This is
that might be the NBA one.
Actually, wasn't that far away.
He's talking about Bol.
Bowl?
This is Aaliyah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Which you know what, you weren't too far off, to be honest. So I'm actually proud of you for that one.
that's half a point.
No,
I want
half points
Jamie.
here.
You know what's crazy? If I sweep the basketball, technically I didn't get SGA right, but
All right, Flinny, who is this?
Oh, Jesus.
He's a star player for the Orlando Magic.
It's Demetrius. Demetrius Williams.
This is Pablo Banchero.
Oh, he's Mexican.
I don't know his nationality, but yeah, former number 1 pick. Can't believe you didn't get that, Flinny. Last one. This one's worth 20 points.
Okay.
I don't think either of you are going to get the plays.
Okay.
Let's go.
Actually, maybe Flynn might be able to get his, but let's go, Luke.
No faith.
I'm struggling with this one.
You're struggling?
No.
I want to see if Mick knows it after you try.
Nah, I got no idea.
Give me a name.
We already had Aaliyah, so
This is probably the best player in the competition right now.
this is Trent Albertson.
It's not Trent
I
Albertson.
thought you were going to just leave it at Trent.
Mickey, can you help him out with this one?
Is it who I think it is? Is that Langford?
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Kyle Langford.
Yeah.
Now, if people don't know, me and Flynn are co-founders of the Carl
You know what's
Langford
crazy?
Appreciation Club.
Since when was this guy so handsome? He's got a good set of chompers on
Speaking
him.
of good teeth, all right?
Yeah.
Carl Langford, and here we go, Flinny. Your last one.
Is this head photoshopped onto his body?
That is
That is a photo I
Like
found of
Chris
him.
Thomas. That's cool.
that is
Shout out to Chris Thomas.
Porzingis.
Oh, wow. Flinny. I think he did study.
No, yeah, I reckon he
I
did.
think he did study.
I reckon he did. And that's a bad picture of him, and
Yeah,
he's
that's
still
a
got
real
it.
bad position.
That's a...
Well, look, Flinny
He
takes
was
the
in
chocolates.
NBA.
No,
And how do you name this guy?
mate. You know, I've got a photographic memory.
Well, Flinny takes the chocolates. Big thank you for Luke for coming on.
Thanks,
Thank
boys.
you, Mick, as always. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you next time.